In a quiet, forgotten corner of Maple Street stood an old, abandoned house. It had once been beautiful, a sprawling Victorian with ornate railings, stained glass windows, and sprawling gardens. But over the years, it had decayed, its windows shattered, paint peeling, and walls thick with ivy that looked like veins, gripping the house in a suffocating embrace. Locals whispered about the house, calling it the house that eats. The legend was that anyone who dared enter never came back. Most people dismissed it as just another urban legend, a way to keep kids from venturing into a dangerous, decrepit building. But some, like Max and his friends, weren't so easily convinced. Max had always been curious. He liked horror stories, he liked thrills, and most of all, he liked proving people wrong. So, on a chilly October night, Max and his two friends, Sarah and Danny, crept into the backyard of the old house, armed with flashlights and enough bravado to override their fear. As they stood in front of the looming structure, the air felt heavy, oppressive. Max, however, brushed it off as his imagination. They climbed the creaky steps and pushed open the front door, which groaned under the force, as if reluctant to let them in. Inside, the house was dark and stale, filled with a strange, earthy smell, like rotting wood and something else, something metallic. "Come on," Max whispered, shining his flashlight down a long hallway lined with faded portraits. Each face seemed to be watching them, eyes dark and accusing. They walked past, ignoring the portraits as they moved further into the house, room by room. In one of the rooms, Sarah spotted a massive antique mirror, caked in dust and grime. She wiped it with her sleeve, revealing a crack down the middle. Her own face, distorted in the glass, seemed to stretch and twist, her mouth opening in an unnatural, silent scream. She stumbled back, heart pounding, but when she looked again, her reflection was normal. "Must be the dust," she murmured to herself, trying to shake off the feeling of dread creeping up her spine. As they continued exploring, strange sounds began to echo through the house. Footsteps, soft whispers, the faint rustling of something moving just out of sight. Danny swore he heard his name being called from a room down the hall. Ignoring Max's protests, he headed toward the voice. He pushed open the door to a small, empty bedroom, barren except for a single rocking chair facing the corner. The chair creaked softly, rocking back and forth, though no one was there. As he watched, the temperature dropped, his breath misting in the air. He felt something cold touch his shoulder, a light, icy caress. Panicked, he spun around, but no one was there. Meanwhile, Max and Sarah heard Danny scream from down the hall, but when they reached the room, he was gone. Only the rocking chair remained, still moving, as if someone had just gotten up. They called his name, their voices growing frantic, but there was no reply. The house was silent once more, the whispers gone. Panicking, they tried to retrace their steps back to the entrance, but the layout of the house seemed to shift, corridors twisting in impossible ways. Rooms they'd passed through moments before were now gone, replaced by unfamiliar, decaying spaces. It was as if the house itself was alive, intentionally leading them deeper into its heart. In their terror, they stumbled into what appeared to be a dining room. The table was set, dust-covered plates laid out as though waiting for guests, though the food on them had rotted away to black, unrecognizable sludge. There, at the head of the table, was Danny, his face ashen, his eyes wide and blank, staring at them with a look of pure horror. Max moved toward him, hand shaking, but as he reached out, Danny's head snapped toward him, his mouth opening in a voiceless scream, eyes rolling back. His body convulsed before slumping forward, motionless. That was when Max felt it, a tug, deep in his chest, as though the house itself was pulling him in, wanting him to stay. He backed away, grabbing Sarah's hand, and they ran, desperate to escape. The hallways blurred around them, stretching longer and longer, trapping them in an endless loop. Finally, they burst through the front door, collapsing on the lawn as the house seemed to breathe out a sigh, its windows flashing with an eerie, crimson glow. They turned back only to see Danny's face staring at them from the second-floor window, his mouth forming a single, silent word. "Run." They did.